One of the beautiful things about the character strength and perspective is it can anchor you in those moments when you feel like anxiety is about to push you off a cliff with all the catastrophizing that's going on in your head, or the depression and the darkness is so intense you can't find your way through it. Do you want to achieve your goals, but anxiety is tripping you up? Like to keep those fun weekend plans, but depression has you canceling again? Hey, I'm Lori, dog mom, lover of nature, and hygge enthusiast. Positive psychology skills help me overcome chronic severe PTSD. If you're ready to learn how to overcome your anxiety and depression and rediscover happiness and purpose in life, then get your cozy on and let's get started. Welcome back to Practical Solutions for PTSD. Today we are picking up on the Not Broken Equipped series, where we're dealing with character strengths and how you can lean into them, develop them, and unlock your superpowers for how to deal with trauma in your own life. And today we're going to be talking about perspective, which is the fifth and last character strength that fall under the head strength category, or wisdom. And it's one of my favorites. Love this one. It has some really great touch points for trauma. Before we jump into that, I did want to let you know about the workshop we have coming up. And trauma, our perspective, is actually one of the things you're going to be talking about in that workshop. It's Calm Emotional Overwhelm. And it's going to be held on April the 21st at 10 a.m. Central Time. We're inside the workshop. We focus on three things. We'll understand overwhelm. So why does anxiety and depression create loops in the brain and body? We're going to help you to interrupt that spiral. This is where perspective comes in. Simple tools that regulate stress in real time. Create steady rhythms that are small practices that help lower emotional pressure over time. We give you some practical tools that you can put into play immediately. You can implement them immediately following or even in the workshop, so you won't have emotional or informational overwhelm. As we talk about calming emotional overwhelm, we're not going to give you information overwhelm. So if you want to sign up, you can go to ceoworkshop.grwebsite.com. Again, that's ceoworkshop.grwebsite.com. The workshop is free. Save your seats. You can get in. There are a limited amount of seating, but you can go to ceoworkshop.grwebsite.com, sign up now, and I look forward to seeing you there. So let's pick up on this character strength and perspective and dive in and see how it can help us with trauma. This is a good one. I really like this one. There's obviously some dark sides to it, like there is with everyone, but there are some really good things that this strength brings to the table. And the good thing is, just a reminder, if we're talking about a strength, you're like, oh man, I really wish I had more of that. You can develop that. I gave you some tips in the episode on how to develop that and to grow that. Those are for anyone who wants to grow that strength and become better at it. So this is a good one to do if you've got PTSD, anxiety, depression, all that kind of stuff. This is a great one that can really help you out. Perspective is often praised as wisdom, being able to see the big picture, offering calm insights when others get overwhelmed. I used to tell people a lot, it's always really nice when you're in a situation where things are falling apart in a meeting or in a project, and you have that one person who is breathing calm into the meeting. They're speaking in a calm voice and bringing some perspective or wisdom to that instance and kind of calming everybody down, talking them off the ledge. That's been done to me more than once. I don't know if he's listening to this show, but my battle buddy in Kuwait, Kenny, had to do that to me many, many times when we were in Kuwait. He was the one person that could effectively talk me off the ledge when I got all wound up. So having those kind of people around, so valuable, and they really, really help you. And as you're healing and growing through your time of trauma, post-trauma, etc., you can begin to develop this skill, and it can really help you to understand a bigger picture. And you don't have to scale back to like the life or the universe, but at least get a little bit better perspective on the trauma, and it can really help you process that a lot better. Now, one thing we want to make clear is it can often feel like pressure from someone or even from yourself that you have to look at the bigger picture when you're in the middle of pain, to be the strong one, to make sense of things before they're ready, or before you've processed or have enough information. Just remember, perspective is not about bypassing pain. We really don't want to do that. It's very unhealthy and it can result in some not so great things down the road. It's also not about being emotionally distant because it's important to be present in the moment. It's not about having answers for every situation. So, at its healthiest, perspective is about the ability to hold the wider view while staying present emotionally. It helps us remember that this moment exists within a larger story, that there's greater purpose at work here. There's more than just this moment without asking us to deny how hard this moment actually is. So you don't want to deny the pain or the difficulty of what you're going through, but when you can put it in perspective of the entire picture, things are easier to handle. So you think about, like a Navy SEAL training up to be what he is. He's a new recruit into the SEALs and he has all this, one of their things is no pain, no gain. And so they're going through all this difficulty training to be able to perform at the high level that they are. And they keep that in mind the entire time they're training, what they're doing it for. So that's perspective. And that's part of what helps us when we're going through difficult times is understanding there's a bigger picture at work. And for those of you that are Christians, this is really good to apply to your walk with God because God has a bigger plan and a bigger purpose that he's working towards. And this is just one small piece of that. Perspective is the ability to see that bigger picture and to offer wise counsel. So for those, as I said, my battle buddy in Kuwait had to give this to me a lot when I was in Kuwait. And I'd be spun up over something and freaking out. And he'd, come talk me off the ledge and offer some of that, that wisdom and counsel and perspective and help me to calm down. He had to do that to me more than once. Having that gift and that ability to do that is very beneficial. So in positive psychology, perspective is associated with life experience, insight, and good judgment. And I will say, the more life experience you have, the more perspective you will have. And there's some that's going to be a more intuitive gift than others if you have that as a character strength. But even for those of us, it's not a signature strength that will develop over time. Looking at this from a trauma-informed lens, the perspective often develops early, especially in people who have grown up quickly or read situations carefully. This could be where they're developing that character trait if they had to go through a period of trauma or difficulty when they were a child or really young. It really helps develop that. Or someone who's going through it at some point, you begin to develop some of that perspective and understanding some of that. Perspective allows us to zoom out just enough to orient ourselves. So, just like with a camera, if you're taking a picture, you can get so zoomed in, you have no idea where you are in the landscape. And so you have to zoom out to figure out where you are. Like when you're trying to zoom in to take a picture of a bird or something, you're like, wow, where did it go? You can see it with the naked eye, but you can't see it through the camera lens. So it's zooming out just enough to be able to orient yourself within your current surroundings, to recognize patterns or to remember context, to say this feels overwhelming, but it's not the whole story. So the situation I'm in right now, the panic attack I'm dealing with, the anxiety that I'm feeling, the depression I'm going through, as hard as it is right now, when I put it in the context of the whole story, it lessens that intensity just a little bit because this too shall pass. For the nervous system, perspective can be grounding. It can really help you in that moment to know that, I'm going to make it through this. I've done it in the past. I've been through this before. I know what it's like to be in darkness, but I know it's going to end. It helps the brain move out of tunnel vision, which is common in anxiety and trauma response. You get very tunneled in to that moment, and perspective can help break you free from that. It doesn't erase intensity. It just adds dimension. So I've mentioned this many, many times. When you're looking at trauma or gratitude or purpose or whatever, you're not trying to erase the pain. You're just going to a both and mindset. So yes, it's intense, but it's also in perspective. There's a lot of other things going on. So you're doing the both and both can be present at the same time. So it just adds dimension to the process. So how is this going to show up in everyday life? Perspective often shows up as steadiness. Being the person who remains calm in crisis. As I've mentioned, Kenny was that for me in Kuwait many times. The one who helps others slow down and see options. People when they're jumping to conclusions, sometimes there are some people that have that down as an art. So you got to slow them down a little bit, or they're making snap decisions without all the proper information, which can very quickly get you into trouble. So, helping them to see those options. It could be that voice in the room that's saying, let's take this one step at a time. Don't try to get from point A to point B in lightning speed. We're going to take this one step at a time. And this is one thing I have problems with, is taking stuff one step at a time. I'm much, much better than I used to be. But having people around to remind me of that, I have found it to be very, very helpful. So internally, perspective can sound something like, this feeling won't last forever. And this is where some of this has developed in me through this process, is understanding that as dark as it may feel right now, as depressed as I may feel, as discouraged as I may feel, it won't last forever. It's going to go away eventually. And so that helps you to hold on through the dark time. It could also be that voice saying, I've been through hard seasons before. I know what it's like. There is an end to this. It may feel like it's going to go on forever, but it's not. There's an end to it. And that will come sooner than later. It could also be like, this is one chapter, but not the whole book. Eventually we're going to get through this chapter. It may be a very long chapter, but eventually we're going to get through it. For people with anxiety, perspective can help soften that catastrophic thinking. Which, when you're caught up in an anxiety attack, or you're just dealing with anxiety symptoms, it's very easy to come to, the worst case scenario. So that perspective can help break that and help you to say, okay, really, is that really going to happen? Probably not. So let's get a little perspective and widen our aperture a little bit and pull in some other information. For people with depression, it challenges the belief that the current state is permanent. So while I may be super, super depressed right now and really discouraged, I know this is going to come to an end. So this is where, like for me in seasonal depression, I've dealt with this for years, since I know at least since my 20s. And at first I didn't understand what was going on. I just knew I was really depressed and couldn't figure it out. But once I gained a better understanding of what was happening, and I knew that there was going to eventually be an end to winter. It wasn't going to go on forever. So at some point I was going to get to summer and feel better. So that's just like one tiny piece of that. It doesn't rush hope. Like, have this, even though you're going through a really difficult time right now. It's not going to say, okay, you have hope right now and, everything's better right now. It just provides you a sense of the horizon and reminds you to keep it in view, that you have a further target to get to. Again, as with everything, there's a dark side, or when this is used a little bit too much or misapplied. So let's take a look at that. Perspective can turn into emotional detachment if you're not careful. And I mentioned earlier, it's important to stay present in the moment while you're looking at the bigger picture. It's very easy to become detached emotionally from the situation too much, so much so that you're not. So that would be the dark side or overuse of it. Another one is to minimize pain of yours or others. I've heard people say, putting in perspective, will this matter in 5 years? No, it won't. So let it go. And that does help, but I'm not saying it doesn't. But you need to be able to process the emotions that you're in right now and not suppress them or shrug them off as irrelevant or unimportant, because it isn't. You are in the present moment. Whether or not you are engaged is another issue, but you are there. And so you need to be able to process that and handle that effectively. So you need to make sure you're not minimizing your pain or the pain of other people. You could also be offering advice instead of presence. And so maybe someone just needs you to listen to them and provide some comfort and maybe a little bit of perspective there to try to help them, but not just go right to advice and, try to, hey, don't worry about this because of da-da-da-da. Process those emotions first before you get to the advice part. Would be a tip on that one. Staying above feeling rather than inside of them. Again, this is where you're emotionally detaching and you're, I'm above it all. I'm not going to engage in the feelings. Now, obviously, you're not trying to get you, especially if this is like a meeting or a group of people, you need to get right down in the middle of it. But kind of getting that happy balance there where you're providing that perspective, but you're still engaged in the moment. So for trauma survivors, perspective can become a way to stay safe, by staying distant, being wise instead of being vulnerable, explaining instead of feeling. Like, I can explain all this away. I don't have to feel anything. For people with anxiety, perspective may suppress emotions until it leaks out later, and it will. I was a Class A suppressor, really good at suppressing emotions, and it does catch up with you later, so you don't want to go down that road. For depression, perspective can sound like self-dismissal. And you could have thoughts like, other people have it worse, so I shouldn't feel this way. Perspective without empathy becomes invalidation, and you don't want to do that to the emotions of the moment or to the situation or the people in your life or yourself. You don't want to invalidate any of that. So perspective, you need to couple empathy with that to give you the right balance. So true perspective, at its healthiest, allows pain to exist within context, not by erasing it. So how do you develop or how does it support trauma? And this is a really, really good one for supporting trauma. It could really help. I've been posting some quotes on Facebook, both on the public side and private side, to that actually deal with perspective. And in the work group that we have coming up on April the 21st, we're going to be talking about this very thing, perspective, and how to use it to try to calm your emotional overload. So it is absolutely very useful to use in PTSD, anxiety, depression, etc. So for PTSD, perspective helps distinguish between past dangers and present safety. And I've talked about this before. PTSD often keeps you trapped in the past, those emotions from the past rolling over. But this supports grounding by reminding the nervous system that the current moment is different from the trauma memory. It's providing you that perspective, that zoomed out look. So you're like, okay, this happened over here, but now I'm here. For anxiety, perspective reduces urgency. It helps slow the senses that everything, or the sense that everything is happening at once, and allows problems to be addressed one at a time. Like with anxiety, you can often feel like it's piling in on top of you. And I still sometimes deal with that. I mean, just last week, I was telling my housemate, I feel like everything is happening at once, and I'm having a hard time finding my way through it. So it happens to everybody, but getting that perspective and that distance to help slow the process down and help you to work through that a little bit at a time. Perspective is really good at that. For depression, perspective challenges hopelessness. This is an easy place to go if you let depression go too far. You can very easily get to the place of hopelessness. And I mentioned earlier, some of the worst depression I ever felt was due to low iron. It was a very physical component to that. But this was a sensation I really struggled with in that season of depression, was hopelessness. But perspective can gently introduce the idea that the current emotional state is not the final word. And that became more of a thing for me once I realized it was iron, and I could start taking some iron supplements to get my iron levels up. But it helps you to understand that what you're feeling right now, the depression, the discouragement you're going through, is not the end of the world. There's going to be, it's going to pass. This too shall pass. For seasonal depression, perspective can frame low moods as a seasonal response rather than a personal failure. And so we just came through the winter, for the fall winter seasonal depression season, at least for those of us up here. I know my Australian friends, I know you're probably headed into it. But for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, we're just past that. But knowing that, okay, January is like my worst month ever. It's really exhausting. It's a low energy month for me, but I know that. And so I was like, okay, I need to buckle down and just kind of build in some boundaries and some self-care for me in January, and kind of create, whatever I need to do to make it through that month. But I know it's January. Like, you hit February, definitely by March, I'm doing better. It's going to be okay. So perspective provides the ability to kind of get through that. You have that to fall back on. So it doesn't demand optimism. And this is another thing we're actually going to be talking about in the workshop. And I had some podcasts on a couple weeks ago, the difference between toxic positivity and authentic gratitude. Well, perspective doesn't demand that optimism, especially not the toxic positivity for sure. It just offers a sense of continuity. Now, there's ways you can develop this, and this is true for anyone, not just the people that have this as a character strength, but for anyone, this would work. And we mentioned this earlier, how important empathy was to perspective. So that is your first one, is to pair wisdom with empathy. So before offering insight to someone, even yourself, and this is really important for yourself, is just as much as it is for anyone else, name the pain. Yeah, hey, I know you're feeling really betrayed right now, and I am so sorry about that, and it's got to really hurt. Or I am feeling really betrayed right now. This is really hard. And that both and mindset I was talking about earlier, and it won't always feel this way. I'm going to get past this pain. It is really, really hard right now, but it isn't going to last forever. Tip number 2 is to listen before advising. This one can be challenging, and that's a whole nother topic on active listening, and we will cover that at some point. But listening before advising can really help with your perspective because it deepens it when it's rooted in understanding and not explanation. So when you really understand all the factors that are affecting the situation, you're going to give much better advice and much better perspective on a situation. Tip number 3 is to practice time-based perspective. Instead of zooming out to a lifelong meaning, like, what is this going to mean for my entire life plan? Zoom out to a shorter time frame. So maybe instead of saying, will this matter to me in 5 years? Well, probably not. There's not a whole lot that's happening today. Maybe you could just say that, what will this matter to me in a week or a month? How will I feel in 5 hours? You zoom out to a shorter period of time to help put that in a better perspective and keep you a little more current in the situation without getting too distant. Number 4 is to let perspective come after regulation. So we've talked about this with other things, but you are more open to being able to handle those de-stressors or whatever it may be when the nervous system is calmed down. So maybe try some breathing exercises first. If you're talking to someone who's completely wound up, you need to get them calmed down first before offering them perspective. If it's yourself, you can do the same thing. Try some of those breathing exercises, grounding exercises, etc. Get your nervous system calmed down, and then you'll be able to receive that a lot better. So perspective is not about being above experience. It's about being anchored within it. So that's where you want to make sure that you're still present in the moment. You're still anchored in that, but it's not the only thing you're seeing. It's the both and. You're seeing both the present moment and the bigger picture. And that can be a little tricky sometimes. So as we wrap this up, remember this. Perspective doesn't mean you have to see the bright side. It just means you don't have to believe that this moment defines everything. If perspective feels hard to access right now, it doesn't mean you've lost it. It could just mean that, I've said this before, it could be in hibernation right now. It may just be waiting for a more gentle space, like when your nervous system is calmed down and things aren't so hyped up. So it may just need a little bit of space. Take some time, ground yourself, do some relaxing, and maybe that perspective will kick in. We'll end with a reflection. I love giving these to you guys. It makes me think as well. So this is really cool. So here's your reflection. Where in your life might you offer yourself the same steady understanding you offer others? I love this one. Partly because I struggle with negative self-talk, which is a whole nother topic that we will get to, I promise. But this is a really, really good one where you are offering yourself the same kindness you're offering others. So I'm going to say it again. Where in your life might you offer yourself the same steady understanding you offer others? You don't have to answer it today. You can just sit with that, mull over it over the weekend. Send me a message. Let me know what you came to, what kind of conclusions you're coming to, how this is helping you. Love to hear back from you as always. And I will see you again next week. Have a great weekend and talk to you later. A quick reminder to sign up for the upcoming workshop. Just go to ceoworkshop.grwebsite.com and sign up for the Calm Emotional Overwhelm Workshop. Hope to see you there. Hey, my friend. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you please take 30 seconds and share it with someone you know who may be struggling with depression and anxiety? Also, would you please leave a quick review for the show? Knowing how this podcast is helping you fills my heart with so much joy, and it motivates me for future episodes. For now, it's time for Sam and I to head outside to enjoy some sunshine and fresh air. We'll see you back here on Tuesdays and Thursdays for more great episodes.